The morning everything shifted felt like someone had slipped a price tag onto my mama's life. I didn't wake up planning to trade my future for her heartbeat, but when men with cold eyes start making threats, your choices shrink fast. And before you judge what I did next, ask yourself something. If the only man who could save your family was a stranger old enough to be your granddaddy, a man who hides half his face behind a smooth, expressionless mask, would you really say no? Because I didn't. I said yes, and that yes became the moment I stepped straight into somebody else's secrets. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle a picture frame. Naya inhaled sharply. "Daddy?" Marcus Hayes stumbled in, dripping rainwater, breathing like he'd run for miles. One hand clenched the doorknob behind him, the other shook violently at his side. Fear sat on his face in a way I'd never seen. "Daddy? What happened?" I whispered. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed hard. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely more than a thread. "Nia, they ain't playing no more." My stomach dropped. "How long did they give you?" His hand trembled as he lifted one finger. 1 week. 7 days. 7 days until everything we had was gone. "And that's not all," he murmured. "If we don't pay, they'll take the apartment." I stared at him, waiting for the rest. The part he was scared to say. "And Mama?" My voice cracked. His shoulders slumped. He said, "She won't live to see next month." For a moment, the floor felt unsteady, like the whole room was tilting. "They threatened Mama?" I breathed. He nodded, shame twisting his expression. "There's another option," he whispered. My pulse quickened. "Daddy, what option?" He dragged a hand down his face, then met my eyes with a look that broke me. "He wants to marry you." Everything in me went still. "Me?" Silence. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. "Daddy, that's not real. That's not a thing people say." "I know," he said, voice shaking. "But this man, Elliot Thorne, he's rich, powerful, old, sick, and after what happened to him, he barely leaves his estate. They said he saw you once right here and—" "No," I whispered, stepping back. "Daddy, no. I don't want this, baby." His eyes filled. "I don't want this for you, but I also don't want to bury your mama." A weak voice came from the hallway. "Naya?" I hurried to Mama's room. Mama lay against thin pillows, skin ashy, eyes tired, but still sharp enough to see through me. "Tell me," she whispered. "They gave Daddy a week and an offer." Her lips parted, fear showing through the pain. "What kind of offer?" I hesitated, then told her. Her reaction was immediate. "No, no, Naya, you will not trade your life for mine." "Mama, I can't lose you." She squeezed my wrist with a strength she barely had left. "The only thing I want you to promise me is that you meet him first. Look him in the eye and trust yourself. That's all." I nodded, tears burning my throat. "I'll meet him. That's the only promise I can make." The next morning, a sharp, controlled knock echoed through the apartment. I opened the door to find a tall black man in a tailored dark suit. "Good morning, Miss Hayes. I'm Darius Powell, representative of Mr. Elliot Thorne." His voice was too calm, too practiced. He handed me a cream envelope. Inside was a glossy photo of a mansion, grand, white pillars, endless windows, the kind of place you only see in magazines. But another photo slid out behind it, a smaller one. Older, a slightly faded picture of the same mansion, but in an upstairs window, behind a sheer curtain, was a blurry human shape, watching, standing too still, too dark. I frowned. "What's this?" Darius's eyes flicked to the photo, just for a millisecond, then he plucked it from my fingers with a smooth, quick move. "Apologies, that one wasn't meant to be included." He slid it back into his folder before I could look again. My skin prickled. He handed me the photo again, written on the back, in tight, perfect handwriting. "This will be your home. E.T." I forced myself to breathe. "So he'll pay for my mother's care?" "Full treatment, immediate admission. And your debt will be cleared today." "And what does he want?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze. "A lawful wife, a companion, someone who sits with him, speaks with him, reads to him." "And what is he like?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Darius hesitated. A tiny flicker of discomfort. "He is private. Since the incident." "What incident?" A longer pause. "He can explain it better." "And the mask?" His jaw stiffened, just slightly. "The mask helps, mostly for medical reasons." A beat. "Mostly." A chill ran through me. "And photos? Can I see him?" "There are no recent photos online," he said without blinking. "Why not?" "He values privacy," he said simply, "and his appearance has changed." I studied myself. "Tell him I have conditions." "I'm listening." "My mother starts treatment today. The debt is erased today. I meet him before anything is official, and I still see my parents." All acceptable. He stepped aside to call someone, speaking in a low voice. I caught fragments. "Yes, the photo mistake won't happen again. Yes, the mask won't frighten her." Those words made my chest tighten. "A car will pick you up tomorrow at 3. He placed a thick envelope on the table. "This is for your mother's immediate care." That night, the rain tapped my window like impatient fingers. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I wasn't scared of the marriage. I was scared of the secrecy and of the silence surrounding this man. Of the way Darius avoided certain words, of the extra photo, the blurry figure in the window, of what I might be walking into. And one question kept circling in my mind. What kind of man hides half his face, and what does he not want me to see? The next morning at 3 p.m., the hum of an engine stopped outside. A black sedan waited by the curb, sleek, tinted, too quiet. Daddy hugged me hard. Mama held my hand, whispering, "Just trust yourself, baby." I nodded, even though trust felt far away. The driver didn't speak as I got in. We moved through the city, then out of it. Trees thickened. The road narrowed. Cold air seeped through the vents. As we reached the gates, I noticed something unusual. No guards in sight, just cameras, dozens of them, all turning toward the car like metal heads swiveling on cue. Gravel crunched under the tires as we pulled up the winding drive. And then the mansion came into view. Tall, pale, silent. My breath caught. As I looked up, a figure stood behind a second-floor curtain. Still, watching. The curtain shifted, just enough for me to see the faint shine of a mask, smooth, unmoving, and one single eye staring down at me with unsettling focus. That was the exact moment I realized I wasn't walking into a marriage. I was walking into a story that belonged to a man I didn't know, and a secret he had no intention of letting me walk away from.
The car stopped in front of the mansion with a low hum, and when the door opened, a cold rush of air hit me. Too cold for the season, like the house was exhaling something it didn't want anymore. I stepped onto the gravel. It crunched under my shoes, sharp and brittle. The driver didn't offer a hand, didn't speak, didn't even glance at me. He shut the door quietly and stared ahead like he'd been instructed to ignore my existence. Before I could decide whether that felt professional or disturbing, the mansion's double doors shifted open on their own. Just a few inches, just enough to say, "Come in," but not enough to feel welcoming. A tiny red camera light blinked above the doorframe, watching, tracking. I swallowed and stepped inside. The foyer stretched upward like the inside of a cathedral. Each footstep echoed too loudly, bouncing off polished wood and marble. A beat of silence, then another. The house felt aware. My eyes drifted to the portraits lining the walls, tall, oil-painted faces from another era. Their eyes seemed to follow me down the hall, not in a supernatural way, just in the unsettling way artists paint characters who look alive. Something creaked upstairs, a soft shift, then stillness. "Hello?" I whispered, even though I didn't actually want an answer. Footsteps approached behind me, controlled, even, each one carefully placed. I turned quickly. Darius stood there, composed as always. "Miss Hayes, welcome to the Warren estate." My heart thumped, but I managed to nod. "Where is he?" "He's waiting in the sunroom. He prefers natural light." Natural light felt like a strange choice for a man who hid behind shadows and masks, but I didn't comment. As we walked, I noticed something odd. Every door we passed, dozens of them, was closed. Not just closed, locked. Heavy black locks bolted into pristine white frames. A shiver crawled up my spine. "Is it always this quiet?" I asked softly. "Mr. Thorne values order." "And staff?" "They appear when called." It was an ordinary answer, but something in his tone felt off. Too clipped, too final. Staff who only come when called. Why did that feel like a warning? We reached large glass doors glowing with afternoon sun. Before opening them, Darius adjusted his sleeve, a small gesture, but one that said he was preparing himself. "Before you meet him, there are things you should understand." My chest tightened. "Like what?" "Mr. Thorne's condition affects his appearance. The incident changed certain facial features. The mask helps with comfort." He paused, watching my expression. "It helps mostly." A beat. "Mostly." He repeated, the second time softer. The unease that washed over me was cold and thick. "I'll meet him," I said, "as ready as I can be." He nodded once and opened the door. The sunroom was bright, almost too bright, but the air inside felt colder than the foyer's shadows. At the far end sat Elliot Thorne. Still, completely still. The mask covered the left side of his face, smooth and blank. The right side looked lined, aged, carved by time and something darker. His silver hair was combed clean. His hands rested perfectly on the armrests, unmoving. He didn't turn when the door opened, didn't acknowledge me until Darius spoke. "Mr. Thorne, this is Ms. Naya Hayes." A long moment, too long. Then his head turned slightly, slow, deliberate, like it cost him something. His visible eye, sharp gray, locked onto mine. "Naya." His voice rasped, uneven. "Welcome." It wasn't that the voice was frightening, it was how wrong it sounded in a room full of sunlight, like it belonged somewhere quieter, darker. "Thank you," I whispered. He studied me, head tilted just slightly, I narrowed as if measuring something I didn't understand. "I apologize for not standing," he said, his words slow, strained. "Circumstances disagree." "It's all right," I murmured. He motioned to a chair across from him. I sat. "You came," he said quietly. "Most would not. I came for answers." "Good," he whispered. "Ask." "What happened to you?" My voice was steady, but my heart wasn't. His fingers lifted slowly, trembling at the joints, and brushed the edge of his mask. "An incident," he said. "One that revealed more truth than I wanted." "What truth?" I pushed gently. He took a shallow breath. A slight stutter. He exhaled hard before finishing. "Ability invites cruelty." It didn't sound poetic now. It sounded painful. "And the mask?" "It helps," he said. A pause. "Mostly." Another pause. "Mostly." A cold shiver curled up my spine. I swallowed. "What about the older photo, the one with someone in the upstairs window?" He went very still. Darius stepped forward, slightly. "Ms. Hayes," that was a miss. Elliot raised a hand, silencing him. "You saw a figure." "Yes," I said. "Who was it?" His eye didn't blink. "That photo was taken when the house had more occupants." "More?" "People leave," he said softly. "Or they're asked to." Something tightened in my stomach. "I'm here because my mother is dying, because she needs help, and because I won't walk into anything blind." He nodded once, almost approvingly. "Clarity is important." "Then tell me why you want me," he said. "See you." "When?" "The day your father came, you answered the door. One moment is enough to see who a person is." "What did you see?" "Loyalty, and a willingness to endure pain for others." My breath hitched. "You want a wife, but not love, not partnership, just presence?" His eyes softened. "I want someone who won't leave." That landed heavier than anything else he'd said. "What happens if I say no?" He lowered his gaze slightly. "Then your mother will die." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement. "And if I say yes?" "You are cared for, protected, your mother heals, your father breathes, and I," his voice rasped, "gain company." I felt my pulse in my throat. My hands trembled in my lap. "Can I see the house?" I whispered, "before I decide?" His answer was immediate. "No." Something inside me dropped. "No," I repeated. "This home is not ready to be explored." Footsteps echoed from the hallway outside, fast, heavy, as if someone was running. Then a sudden stop. Elliot didn't look toward the sound, but his fingers curled once, then stilled. Darius tensed. "Sir." "No," Elliot murmured. "Let her hear the truth." Then he turned back to me. "You saw the figure in the old photo, but you didn't see the second one." My breath tightened. "Second?" "The reflection, behind you." A cold wave swept through me. A tremor climbed up my spine. I stood shakily. I need to think." Of course, he said, too calm, too certain.
Darius opened the door for me. I walked out, but before the doors closed, I glanced back. Elliot sat perfectly still, but his eye followed me until the last sliver of light between us vanished. As I stepped into the hallway, there it was again. That faint, unmistakable feeling. A presence behind me, watching, following me. And for one terrifying moment, I knew whatever watched me wasn't wearing one. I moved down the hallway faster than I intended, trying not to look like I was fleeing, even though every instinct screamed at me to get as far from that sunroom as possible. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. The air felt heavier now, almost thick, like breathing through damp cloth. Each step echoed behind me, too loud, almost as if someone else was stepping in time with me. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. Not yet. The hallway narrowed into a long corridor lined with tall windows. Sunlight spilled across the floor in golden rectangles, dust drifting lazily in the still air. I stopped halfway down and pressed a hand to my chest. I needed 1 second, just one, to keep my thoughts from unraveling. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle. Fabric brushing the floor. Slow. Close. I spun around. Nothing. Just the hallway stretching behind me and portraits staring from their frames. I told myself to breathe. You're stressed, that's all. But when I looked again, my stomach dropped. One portrait had shifted. Not enough to be obvious, but different. Earlier, the woman in the painting had been looking straight ahead. Now her head angled just slightly left. Her painted eyes seemed to follow me with a colder focus. A chill ran over my arms. No, I whispered. I'm tired. I'm seeing things. A floorboard creaked behind me. I froze, heart slamming. I snapped around again. Empty hall. Stillness thick as oil. Stop it, I whispered to myself. Stop panicking. But the house felt wrong, alive, listening. I turned back and nearly jumped out of my skin. Nia? Darius stood at the far end of the corridor, his silhouette framed by the hall light. I swallowed. I didn't hear you. Are you all right? He asked, stepping forward. His eyes flicked very quickly toward the portraits, then back to me. His jaw tightened the tiniest bit, like he'd seen my fear and wasn't surprised by it. I thought I heard something, I said softly. Here? He blinked, expression reassembling. No. I didn't believe him. Mr. Thorne asked that I take you to the guest quarters. It will be safer there. My heartbeat jumped. Safer? His posture stiffened, his eyes slid toward the staircase with a cautious flick before he masked it with a controlled breath. It will be safer for everyone. That answer felt like a warning wrapped in politeness. I followed him because the alternative was staying alone in that hallway with that shifting portrait. The guest room was beautiful in a cold, museum-like way. Velvet drapes, polished wood, a massive bed made too perfectly. The covers stretched smooth without a single wrinkle. It felt staged, untouched. But one detail caught my eye. The mirror on the far wall wasn't centered. It faced the door directly, almost deliberately, like someone wanted it angled that way. Darius moved aside. If you need anything, use the phone on the nightstand. Does it call outside the house? He shook his head. No. My pulse tightened. Why not? Privacy. Whose privacy? I whispered. He didn't answer. He simply nodded once and gently closed the door. The silence pressed in like thick fog.
I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The grounds below were too still. Manicured lawns, trimmed hedges, and no people. Not a single gardener, maid, housekeeper, nothing. Just cameras. One perched near the walkway, another at the garden, two more pointed toward the back doors. All turning slowly, tracking the house. Tracking me. I stepped back and let the curtain fall. A sudden knock jolted through me. 3 taps, light, evenly spaced. I froze. "Yes?" I called, a voice barely audible. No answer. I stared at the door, heartbeat quickening. A moment of silence. 2, 3. Then 2 gentler taps, almost hesitant. I stepped forward cautiously. My fingers hovered over the knob. Right as I touched it, a soft voice whispered through the wood. "Don't." I yanked my hand back like the metal burned me. My breath caught in my throat. The voice was female. Young. Faint. Sad. It wasn't Darius. It wasn't Elliot. "Who are you?" I whispered, terrified but drawn forward. Silence. I leaned closer, heart pounding. "Please, tell me who you are." A soft exhale shivered through the wood, fragile, trembling, like someone trying not to cry. "Not safe." Barely a breath. "Not safe here." My chest tightened. "Why? What's happening?" A tiny tap against the door, like fingers searching for courage. "Get out!" The voice broke slightly. "Before he decides you stay." My skin prickled with cold fear. "Are you—" I swallowed hard. "Are you hurt?" Another tiny pause. "Please." One word. Soft. Begging. Heartbreaking. Footsteps echoed down the hall, heavy, approaching. The unseen woman gasped, so quietly I barely heard it. Then her footsteps fled softly down the corridor, quick and light, like someone running on bare feet. I stood frozen as the heavier steps came closer. "Nia," Darius's calm voice. I forced air into my lungs and cracked the door open an inch. "I heard someone," I said. "Who?" He sharpened instantly. "I don't know. A woman. She told me—" He cut me off. "There are no women on staff." My blood ran cold. "What?" "There are no women working in this house. None." He held my gaze, searching my face for something. Fear, confusion, maybe sanity. "Rest," he said, finally, softer. "We'll speak in the morning." He stepped back. His footsteps receded. Silence returned like a heavy blanket. I closed the door, locked it, then backed away until my knees hit the bed. I sat hard, hugging myself as the room darkened around the edges. A memory flashed. The old photograph, the blurry figure in the window, and the reflection behind me. Now the whisper at my door. I wasn't imagining this. Someone else was in this house. Someone who wanted me gone. Someone Elliot wasn't acknowledging. "Who are you?" I whispered into the room. Nothing answered. Then, from somewhere deep inside the mansion, a low creak echoed. A long, slow sigh moved through the walls, and a door, somewhere far away, closed by itself.
Elliot looked at the floor for a moment, his jaw clenched. There are corridors in this house that should not be walked, doors that should not be opened. That's not an answer. He exhaled, a broken breath. You should not follow voices in the night. That's still not an answer. He lifted his head, visible eye locking onto mine. It is the only one I can give. He looked tired. Not physically, something deeper, older. I want the truth, I said quietly. All of it. And I will give it, he murmured, when you are ready. That doesn't help me. It has to. His voice dropped lower. Some truths require readiness. What does that mean? He didn't speak. Instead, he studied me, slowly, carefully. You should not walk the halls alone. Not yet. Because of her? His hand curled fractionally into a fist. Because of what she ran from. A chill ran down my spine. But you said... He interrupted gently. I said that you should rest. Dismissed again. I stood, heart pounding. Nia, he said softly. I turned. His visible eye softened, not with warmth, but with warning. Some things in this house are not looking for you. His voice dipped to almost a whisper. But some are. A shiver snapped down my spine. Who? I breathed. Be careful, he murmured, where you listen. I stepped out of the study. The hallway felt colder than before, like something had been waiting for me. I walked a few steps, then stopped dead. At the far end of the corridor stood a faint silhouette. Bare feet on the cold floor, shadowed hair hanging forward, head tilted, watching me. The air around her shifted, just barely. A soft rustle. Like her hair moved in a breeze I couldn't feel. I blinked. She vanished. But the scent she left behind didn't. That same sad perfume, woven through the dust of the house, the same scent from the photograph, the whisper, the humming. She wasn't warning me because she feared Elliot. She was warning me because she remembered. Whatever she ran from was still here, and it had woken up.
I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper again. Soft, trembling. Too much like someone begging through the dark. Before he decides you stay. The words stayed wrapped around my ribs all night. I kept sitting up, listening. The room felt too still, too arranged. The bedspread pulled tight like drum skin, the mirror angled perfectly toward the door. Every detail in the room felt curated, like someone had set the stage before I arrived, or before someone else had left. By morning, the air felt heavier than night. Pale blue light slid through the curtains, soft on the walls, but it didn't warm anything. If anything, the silence felt thicker. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty, but not peacefully empty. Empty like someone had just stepped out of sight. I walked, every step echoing in a rhythm that didn't feel like mine. My nerves felt stretched thin, like the house was tugging gently at the frayed edges. Halfway down the corridor, I froze. A sound drifted through the air. Light, trembling, humming. It floated down the hall like a memory someone tried not to sing aloud. 3 notes. Soft, sad, gone. I held onto the wall. Hello? Silence. A charged stillness, like the air had shifted shape to avoid answering. I took a breath. I need 1 second. Just one. But the moment I stepped toward the sound, Nia, I nearly screamed. Darius stood a few feet behind me, composed but not fully. His tie was slightly crooked, a piece of his hair out of place. His eyes looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. You startled me, I whispered. My apologies, he murmured. This house carries sound strangely. Does it? I asked. His jaw tensed, small, quick, almost nothing. The master would like to see you, he said, in the lower study. Lower? I repeated. Like basement? He didn't answer the question. Follow me. The house felt different in the morning. Emptier, but not cleaner. A little heavier, like something had shifted during the night and now sat quietly, listening. We reached the staircase. As I grabbed the railing, I saw it. A small handprint, smudged lightly in dust, too delicate for any adult. Fingers small, thin. A woman's. A young one. I reached toward it on instinct. Don't, Darius said sharply. I jumped at the sudden edge in his voice. He forced his face neutral again. It's just dust. Please. But his eyes flicked to the handprint with something very close to fear. We descended. The lower level smelled faintly of old wood and a soft hint of perfume, too gentle, too fresh, like it didn't belong to this cold house. The scent drifted through the hallway, lingering in corners, clinging to shadows. We reached a carved door. He knocked once. Enter, Elliot rasped from inside. Darius opened it for me, but didn't cross the threshold. He stayed outside, as if stepping in wasn't allowed. The study inside was dim, lit by a single lamp. Heavy curtains blocked most of the sun. The walls were lined with old books. Something ticked softly in the corner. A clock. But the rhythm was wrong. Too slow, like it was running out of breath. Elliot sat in a tall-backed chair, not his wheelchair. Posture straight, but strained. Seeing him seated differently made him look larger, more rooted in the dark. He turned his head slowly toward me. The mask caught the lamplight. Nia, he murmured. You didn't rest. I couldn't. My voice felt small. He nodded once, like he already knew. Sit. I sat. My fingers curled in my lap. You heard something last night, did you not? My breath caught. How? This house is old. Old things have their sounds. That wasn't a sound, it was a voice. His fingers tapped once on the armrest. Slow, deliberate. What did she say? She told me to leave. Before you decided I stay. A long silence fell between us. His visible eye darkened. Not with anger, but with a weight that pulled something inside the room tighter. And did you believe her? He asked gently. I don't know. Fear is not fact. But the way he said it, it didn't sound like a lecture. It sounded like a regret. Who was she? I asked. I stayed frozen in the hallway long after the figure vanished, staring at the empty stretch where she'd stood moments earlier. The perfume she always carried, that soft, lonely scent, still drifted faintly through the air. It tightened something deep in my chest in a way fear alone never could. She had been there, closer than before, close enough to breathe the same air. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move, But every step felt loud, echoing down the corridor as if the house didn't like sudden noise. The walls seemed to hold sound, stretch it, return it in strange ways. When I reached the top of the stairs, I stopped fast. A folded piece of cream-colored paper sat on the banister. Neat, crisp, placed there deliberately. My breath caught. That hadn't been there before. It couldn't have been. My fingers shook as I picked it up. The paper was cool, like someone had just set it down. One word was written on the front, in small, urgent handwriting. Run. My throat tightened. The handwriting was delicate, too delicate. Letters pressed too hard, like someone who hadn't written freely in a long time. I turned the paper over with trembling hands. The ink smudged slightly beneath my thumb. Fresh. Recently written. Recently placed. Miss Hayes? I spun around instantly. Darius stood at the top of the staircase, his expression nearly neutral, except for the fleeting dread flickering through his eyes when he saw the note. He knew it. He recognized it. Or he recognized her. "Where did you find that?" he asked. His voice was too calm, too even. "Right here." I held the note up. "Someone left it." "Someone?" he murmured. "Or something." I took a step closer. "You know this handwriting." His silence was confirmation. "I need to leave. Now." Darius's eyes darted down the corridor, towards the darker end, towards somewhere I hadn't been yet. "Nia, where would you go?" he whispered back. "There are doors in this house that stay closed for a reason." My pulse hammered in my throat. Closed to keep her in, or keep someone else out? He exhaled slowly, tight, controlled, as if he was holding back far more than words. "This house doesn't let you walk out until he says so," he said softly. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "So I'm trapped?" "No," he swallowed. "You're contained." A chill crawled up my spine. "Darius, what does that mean?" Before he could answer, a sharp sound cracked through the hall. A door slamming, hard. Not down here. Upstairs. The guest floor, where I had slept. Darius stiffened. Another slam. Closer. Angrier. Then the sound shifted. Footsteps. Fast. Bare. Running. My lungs constricted. "She's up there," I whispered. Darius grabbed my arm. "We need to move. Now." He pulled me towards the opposite side of the hall, not towards the front of the mansion, but towards a narrow space behind a carved column I hadn't noticed before. He pressed his palm against the wood. A hidden panel clicked open, just enough for a person to fit through. "Go," he urged. "Where does this lead?" "A safer part of the house." Safer from Elliot or safer from her? His voice dropped to a whisper. Both. That answer almost undid me. I slipped inside. The passage smelled like old cedar and dust, untouched for years. The narrow walls swallowed sound instantly. Built-in shelves lined the sides, filled with boxes, faded books, strange objects wrapped carefully in cloth. But what pulled my attention wasn't the shelves. It was the tall mirror leaning against the far wall. Old. Tall. Framed in tarnished silver. Its surface was fogged with dust, except for one thin streak down the center, where fingers had drawn through the grime. It wasn't old. It wasn't accidental. Someone had touched it recently. My throat tightened. Someone had stood right there, facing the mirror, reaching for it. "Darius, who did that?" He stepped in behind me, closing the panel softly. The footsteps upstairs thudded violently, pounding against the boards. "Don't focus on the mirror," he murmured. "Why?" I whispered. "Because she used to stand there." A cold flutter moved through me. Used to? I echoed. He didn't answer. The footsteps grew louder above us, quick, uneven, frantic, running in circles, searching. Then they stopped. Right above our heads. Silence thickened the passage. A lift, his hand, a subtle warning, and I held my breath. A soft creak of pressure pressed down on the ceiling boards. Weight shifting. Standing almost directly above us. A single flake of dust drifted down. Then another, then a third. A sound followed. Soft, muffled, fragile. A whisper, sinking through the wood. Don't stay. My eyes burned. Her voice was so thin, so tired. Why is she crying? I whispered, voice cracking. Because she remembers what it cost her, he murmured. What cost? His jaw tightened. You'll understand soon. The ceiling gave a faint shudder. A small sob, barely a breath, trembled downward. Please. Then the footsteps drifted away. Slow, dragging, defeated. The quiet she left behind felt heavier than her presence. I exhaled shakily. What does she want from me? Darius didn't look at me. She wants to keep you alive. Before I could speak, a sudden cold breath swept through the passage. Impossible, because there were no windows or vents. The air brushed the back of my neck, lifting a strand of my hair. Then, from the deepest part of the wall, or the oldest memory of the house, a voice whispered, "Return." Not her voice, not Elliot's, not Darius's. Something older, something buried. Darius sucked in a sharp breath. We need to go, now. Where? My voice trembled. To the only place she won't follow you. I turned. And where is that? He met my eyes, fear swimming beneath the surface. The one place she refuses to see again. Darius!
He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a trembling whisper. Elliot Thorne's bedroom. I followed Darius through the narrow passage with my heart pounding so hard it shook my ribs. The air inside the walls felt colder, tighter, like the house itself knew where we were going, like it was trying to brace for it. Why his bedroom? I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It's the only place she won't go, Darius murmured. She hasn't stepped near it since the incident. The incident, I repeated. You keep saying that like I'm supposed to know what it means. You will, he said softly, whether you want to or not. Something about the way he said that made my stomach knot. The passage sloped slightly downward, then curved left. We passed small windows covered in dust, narrow vents blocked by age, shelves full of objects wrapped in faded cloth. What is all this? I asked. Darius didn't answer. He paused at a locked wooden door with a small brass keyhole. This leads behind the west wing, he said. Stay close. His hand shook slightly as he unlocked it. When the door swung open, a rush of colder air swept over my skin. We stepped out into a dark, narrow hallway, the kind of houses keep hidden because they were never meant for guests. The walls were close, too close. Bare wood on both sides. No art, no windows, just a single runner rug leading forward. I felt the hair on my neck rise. You're scared, I said softly. Yes, he whispered. We walked quickly, our footsteps swallowed by the carpet. The air felt heavier the closer we came to the end of the hallway. Then, a door appeared. A tall, black door. Different from the rest of the house. Carved wood, deep scratches on the bottom edge, long, thin, desperate scratches. My throat tightened. What happened here? Darius didn't look at the door. He looked at me. She didn't want to go inside, he murmured. She fought, hard. A tremor ran through my arms. You mean, yes, he whispered. That's why she won't come near it now. My chest squeezed tight. He reached for the handle. The metal looked cold enough to burn skin. Wait, I said, grabbing his wrist. What's in there? Truth and consequences. Before I could respond, he turned the handle. The door opened with a slow, exhausted creak. A cold draft slipped past us. Heavy, sad, full of something that felt like breath held too long. We stepped inside. The room was dark, except for a single lamp on a dresser, glowing dimly like a dying pulse. Heavy curtains were drawn, blocking out daylight. The bed was enormous, but the sheets were rumpled. Not messy, but restless. And there were dents in the mattress. Deep ones, as if someone had sat there for hours, alone. I took one step forward. A scent drifted through the room. Familiar, faint, heartbreaking. The same perfume, the same scent she carried. It clung to the air, folded into the sheets, lodged in the wood. She was here. This was her room. Darius closed his eyes. Yes. And you let me sleep in mine while she... No, he said quickly. You don't understand. She wasn't locked here. Not at first. Not at first? My voice cracked. What happened after? He swallowed hard. But before he could speak, Nia. Elliot's voice filled the doorway. I turned, breath catching. He was leaning against the frame, not in his wheelchair, but standing with shaky balance, one hand gripping the wood, the other at his side. His mask gleamed softly in the dim light, the single gray eye fixed at me. Darius stiffened. Elliot ignored him. You shouldn't be in here, Elliot said, hoarse. You lied. About her. About everything. I didn't lie. I withheld. That's the same thing. No, he said quietly. Lies rot. Silence buys time. He looked around the room as if seeing ghosts. This room remembers too much. What happened to her? Tell me. Elliot's breathing stuttered behind the mask. She was my daughter. The world went still. My breath stilled, my heartbeat stilled, even the air seemed to freeze. Your daughter? He nodded once. Her name was Elise. The perfume, the humming, the handprint, the whisper. She wasn't a stranger. She was a ghost of a life he couldn't save. Where is she? I breathed. Elliot closed his eyes. Pain carved through his expression. She died in this house, and I failed her. My hand flew to my mouth. Darius stepped forward, voice tight. Sir! No, Elliot said firmly. She deserves truth. He looked at me again, eye burning behind the mask. I asked you to marry me, not to trap you, not to keep you. His voice cracked. But so I wouldn't die alone in the place where she did. Something inside me broke. You knew I was afraid, and you still... I am afraid too, every second. The lamp flickered. A soft step sounded behind me. I turned, heart jumping, but no one was there. Just perfume, just sadness, just memory. Elliot's voice trembled. She won't enter this room because it hurts her, but she follows anyone who might repeat her fate. And what fate is that? I asked, voice barely audible. He looked down. She gave her life trying to escape this house. Tears spilled down my cheeks. And now, he whispered, she fears the house might keep you too. The air shifted suddenly. A cold gust swept through the room.
strong enough to lift the curtains, push dust across the floor, rustle the sheets of the bed. Elise was here. Not visible, but here. I felt a small, gentle pressure on my shoulder. Soft, not threatening, but pleading. A whisper brushed my ear. Go. My breath stopped. Elliot turned his head sharply, but he couldn't see her. Darius whispered, She's trying to protect you. Another whisper, trembling now. Please. I closed my eyes. A sob broke inside me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The cold eased. The presence faded. The perfume drifted away like a sigh released. When I opened my eyes, the room felt empty again. Heavy, but empty. Elliot sank slowly onto the edge of the bed, trembling. The mask hid most of his face, but not his grief. I didn't bring you here to hurt you, he said quietly, only to have someone witness the truth before it buries me. I wiped my eyes. Elliot, I don't know what to do. You don't need to choose now. Just live. Get out of this house while you still can. My breath hitched. And you? He looked at the floor. I made this house my grief, and grief does not release its makers. Darius moved beside me. I'll take you to the gates. I hesitated. One last glance at the room, at the history soaked into its walls, and when I turned toward the hallway, I felt it. Just for a moment. A small warmth brushing my hand, like fingers, like a thank you. I whispered, Goodbye, Elise. The perfume flickered once, then was gone. And I walked out of the room the house had been waiting to open. Out of the tragedy that wasn't mine, out of the story that almost claimed me too. But as I left the hallway, I heard one last whisper. Far away, faint, barely there. Be free. And I knew she finally was. I stepped out of the hall with Darius, the air behind me settling into a silence that felt like a long-held breath finally released. Maybe the house would always remember, but it didn't need me to stay trapped in its memories.
And before I walked out through the front doors, I just wanted to say something. Not to the house, not to Elliot, but to you, listening. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. Stories like these, they don't just get told, they get felt. And if you felt even a little of what I felt in that house, you're exactly the kind of person I want around. If you want more stories like this, the ones that stay in your chest long after they end, stick around. Hit the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe if you want to be part of the circle that gets the next one before anyone else. No pressure. Just, if you're here, I'd like you to stay. Because the next story, it's already whispering.